Off the top of my dome piece, just sharing some thoughts. It's now October, and this is the season that they call autumn or fall. And what happens in the fall? In the fall, energy falls or goes down. So what happens now? You're looking at the trees, right? And you're looking at the grass. Everything's turning colors, turning orange and yellow and red. And it's losing that green essence of chlorophyll. The transformation that's taking place in the earth, the transformation that's taking place in the trees is that all of the energy in the tree is being pumped back down into the ground. Remember that during the fall, the energy of the trees, the sugars, the sweets, the everything that the tree has is being pumped into the ground. Okay, everything has a cycle. Some things go up, some things go down in the material world. And they switch places. Once you hit the bottom, you start going back up. Once you hit the top, you start going back down. The energy rises through the sun-filled months of the year. So when spring comes, when the new year comes, real life begins in spring. Life does not begin in winter. Life begins in spring, the life cycle of our planet. So in the spring, all of the energy is rising from the ground to the top of the trees. That's why during the spring and the summer, you start to eat things like what? Fruits and vegetables. Things that's above the ground. You cultivate and get the energy from them when the energy is rising. But then when the energy starts to descend and we approach winter, you start eating things that come from the ground, like roots. You start eating more soup. You start eating things like potatoes, things that's coming from the ground. By the way, they call the potato the king of vegetables, and I could see why. The potato, it can be mixed with almost any food. You know, if you have a little potatoes and milk, it's a lot of things you could do with potatoes, milk. Potatoes definitely, the king of vegetables. Just like they call mango as the king of all fruit. So anyway, about this ascending and descending energy, right? I remember years ago, I was in one of those small classes with Dr. York. Small group of us, young disciples of his, that he used to train us separately from. He used to give us different teachings than he was giving the rest of his congregation, his flock. You know, he would tell us certain things and be like, all right, don't reveal that yet. But long story short, in one of those classroom meetings upstate, he told me that in this day and time, I think I'd asked him, like, you know, what's my spiritual nature or something like that? What's my spiritual identity? Because, by the way, if a person is a spiritual master, a real, true, bona fide spiritual master, they'll be able to tell you particular details about your eternal position, your eternal situation. They'll be able to tell you things like who you are in the spiritual world, your gender, your purpose, your relationship to Krishna, etc., etc., etc. There's at least 8 details that a bona fide spiritual master can give you pertaining to your spirit. So I asked him, but remember, keep in mind, back when I was studying under Dr. York, I was fortunate enough to be a teacher in the Hall of Knowledge. I met a lot of the people that are your celebrities and entertainers today. They used to come to the Hall of Knowledge, you know, because Dr. York was our master teacher. And I was fortunate enough to represent him for a good time while I was about 18 and 19 years old, you know, in that Hall of Knowledge in front of hundreds of people every week. And during that time, I didn't know the difference between matter and spirit. I didn't know the difference between spiritual energy and material energy. I heard different people, we had a saying, it's called moose, making up shit. And a lot of people would moose when you ask them about the spirit or the mind, or they will quote what they read in a book. But the thing about spirit itself is that spirit is unified. There is no opinions on spirit, subjectivity, or how I see it or how I think it. That's not how spirit works. Spirit is unified. It's the unifying principle. Without spirit, there would be no consciousness or life. So we have to know that spirit is one. Excuse me, in quality. But anyway, I asked him about my spiritual nature, and he gave a vague answer. But his answer was based in truth and fact. He was speaking more about people's personality nature. Now, Dr. York used to teach us that there were many ranks of angels, angelic beings, Malaika. And two of those that he used to concentrate on a lot was the seraphim and the cherubim. He taught us that the cherubim are composed of 180 degrees of negative energy, and the seraphim are composed of 180 degrees of positive energy, and that the seraphim were basically on the side of God, and the cherubim were like the negative angels. But he also warned us, he gave us a caveat that try not to think of it in terms of good and evil, but we're just talking about the expression of their energy. Cherubims, I don't know if that's true, if the cherubims are negative and seraphims are positive. But what he specifically said was, in this day and time, you are either a seraphim descending or a cherubim ascending. Now, you can imagine how I took that, because I was 19 and I was a space cadet. I was maybe 18 at the time, 17. I was a space cadet, man. And I just wanted to be 100% positive and on the, the good and godly path. I wanted to be the shining angel of God, so to speak. I just wanted to be properly situated. So I was hoping that he would say something positive. But what he did, he gave me an axiomatic truth where two sides of the equation are equally true. In this day and time, you're either a descending negative positive person or an ascending negative person. We could take that statement so many ways and look at society and look at who has all of the power now and who doesn't have the power now, and it'll kind of give you an idea. For example, white nationalist groups, white supremacists, people who are destructive terrorists who've had a history of terrorism in this country, they are currently in ascendancy. They're on the rise because they have a powerful asura, a powerful demon in the form of Donald Trump is empowering them. So those negative forces are on the rise. But when you think about it, for the whole history of America, negative energy has always been on the rise. We've never really, except for the people who this country was meant for, there has never been an overall period of prosperity or positivity for the entire inhabitants of America. So therefore, negativity has always been in ascendance in this country. Now, came across a book recently by Zolar called Encyclopedia of Hidden and Occult Knowledge or something like that. Taking a look at it, right? And something caught my attention. He was explaining that on the planet Earth, you have negative and positive ions, and they flow back and forth between the poles of the Earth. And you know what Zolar said in that book? He said that the Earth is composed of ascending negative ions and descending positive ions. So whatever Dr. York was trying to tell me at that time, it also lines up with what's going on a cosmic scale, and it lines up with the teachings of Kabbalah. Now, I never knew a lot about Kabbalah, but I know Kibbutz means to receive. And I know that in Krishna consciousness, they teach us that the path that we're on is the path of receptive knowledge. We receive knowledge from either the Most High Supreme or his authorized representative. That, my brothers and sisters, is the path of Kabbalah, to receive from the Most High. Now, a lot of us have very developed egos, and we think that we've produced something or that we know something, But all we're doing is regurgitating thoughts that we got from other people anyway. And if you came up with an original thought, you would still need a way to test this original thought against reality. I'm trying to say that everything that arises from the mind is not based on eternal reality. It's based on temporary reality, because the mind itself is temporary and the mind can decay. You know, you could build your mind up. That which can be built can also be destroyed. So if your mind can be built, your mind can decay, then you can't trust all of the thoughts that's coming from something that's constantly in a state of flux. And that is the problem with the material universe. It is always in a state of flux. It's always either ascending or descending. You either headed towards, when you're taking a walk somewhere, think about this. When you're taking a walk from point A to point B, you either coming from a good time and headed to a bad time, or you coming from a bad time and headed to a good time. Think about what I just said. Nothing stays the same in the material universe. It's always wobbling up and down. And we understand from quantum physics that this whole phantasmagorical material manifestation is nothing but the result of fluctuations on a quantum level, as opposed to the science that Krishna spoke of in Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, when he was explaining the environment of the soul itself. Not the environment, but the attributes of the soul itself. One thing he kept saying was that the soul can't be crushed, can't be dried up or powdered. You can't drown the soul. You can't cut it in half. You can't burn it with fire. He said it is eternally immutable and indestructible. Now, there is nothing that we have seen in the material world. Even the sun changes. Even Jupiter. When I was young, Jupiter had a big storm on it, a big red storm that lasted for what, 23 years? So if I'm 47, there was a storm up there that lasted for half of my lifespan. And now it's gone. Kids, my grandchildren will never see that storm on Jupiter that I saw, but it was there. Everything in the material world changes. Nothing stays the same. That's why the word is Jagat, always changing. This is the world of flux. However, Krishna also speaks of, in the Sanskrit language in the Bhagavad Gita, he also speaks of the permanent field upon which all of this material cosmic manifestation is placed. So the world we're dealing with, although it's real, we're here, we feel stuff, it's not eternal, it's temporary, it's always changing. However, all of us desire to live forever. Inside, deep somewhere, none of us wants our life to end, because your nature is eternal. Or else you couldn't desire something that's not a part of you. You actually desire eternal cognizance, because that's the natural order. Why do you think death disturbs you so much? Because death is not the natural order. Impermanence is not the natural order. Now listen, I can't tell you how to get there. I just have an idea. And you know the plug. You know what's going to happen next. You know what I'm about to say, right? I'm about to say, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I understand the science of Krishna consciousness to be the highest spiritual science on the earth right now. And I don't get that from the Hare Krishnas. I got that from people outside of the fold of Hare Krishna. Then yesterday I'm looking at A.A. Austin Bay's page on Facebook, and he's going to show a diagram that seems to be based on the Kabbalah tree of life. And what do you know? Right under the position where the Supreme Lord is, you see the Vedas. And the Kabbalah is supposed to be Hebrew knowledge. But even the ancient Hebrews will tell you Kabbalah is just something that's been handed down from time immemorial. So if you want to use our false ego to figure stuff out, that's the path of ascending knowledge. That's the path where you assume that you are a proprietor of something, that you are a proprietor of knowledge, that knowledge originated with you or your race or your continent. And it doesn't work like that. None of you are progenitors. All of you are receivers. All of you are Shakti. I wish you all blessings. Haribo.